Hello everyone, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club, and welcome to my channel. In tonight's video, I'm going to outline a new campaign system that I'm testing for Last Night on Earth, the zombie game. In addition, I'm going to use this opportunity to update my viewers on my thoughts for upcoming content and some new games that I've got my eye on, and my plans for my upcoming 2025 Halloween month programming. We'll begin with my discussing the Last Night on Earth campaign system that I'm working on. I've tried in the past to come up with a system to link several scenarios into a campaign-like system for the game, but I was not happy with the results. I've come up with a slightly less ambitious system that might offer solo players a fun and thematic campaign system for the game. Before I discuss the system, I've prepared a short video to give the viewers some background on what is happening behind the scenes of the system. So let's watch that video now.
In 1985, a multinational experiment called Project Borealis is launched to counteract the effects of global warming by injecting supercooled aerosols into the upper atmosphere. The project goes off script during a routine high-altitude test over Lake Superior. What forms isn't just an aurora, it's a luminous veil across the sky, and for 3 nights, the lake stops reflecting the stars. Soon after, the jellies appeared, or as the locals call it, the wash, translucent, jellyfish-like blobs that fell from the sky and washed ashore. Not long after, people began to die. But it's not the creatures that kill. It's what they carry. The organisms exude an invisible spore that hyperoxygenates blood, making people euphoric and energetic. Victims go days without sleep, claiming they can hear the veil of the aurora. Then they are beset with mania and extreme hunger. Their veins begin to glow green, their skin shrivels, and they develop an insatiable desire for human flesh. One mystery remains. Why are some people immune to the condition and others are not?
I've chosen to set the campaign in northern Wisconsin. I like this region of the state, and I selected Lake Superior as a central point in the background of the campaign. So I've created this campaign map. It's a little darker than what I had anticipated, but this is just a first draft. Basically, we've got the city of Ashland, which is a real place in northern Wisconsin. The other locations are just created locations for thematic purposes. Along the top, we have a threat tracker, and that's going to be instrumental in the campaign. The object of the campaign is to accumulate 7 or more victory points, and then to win the next scenario after we've achieved that. This would represent the survivors gaining the upper hand over the zombie horde and accumulating information about what caused the outbreak. The heroes can lose the campaign if we ever get to -7 or less victory points, and heroes lose the next scenario. I'm envisioning the campaign to work something like this. We're going to begin by randomizing some tokens that are numbered 1 through 6, and these come in the Last Night on Earth 10th Anniversary Edition. So we're going to randomize these. These are numbers 1 through 6, and then we're going to place them on each of the locations other than our starting city, which is going to be the city of Ashland. These are going to offer some random events that will happen when the heroes travel to these locations. So we would deploy those tokens to the campaign map. We're going to be starting in the city of Ashland, so we'll place a campaign marker there, and our threat tracker will start at 0. Then we get to turn over one of the tokens, and that would represent our knowledge of the area or a recent radio communication from the location. So we'll say that we turn over the token in the town of Big Bay, and that's number 2. So we would look up on our sheet for number 2 on our travel event board. And number 2 reads, Military Convoy. You come across a string of abandoned military vehicles and supply crates. If you decide to investigate further, you can draw 2 hero cards, keeping only the item cards, and then we'd have to roll a d6. If the result is 3 or less, the group would be ambushed by a horde of the undead lurking nearby. We would roll a d4, and the indicated number of heroes would each receive 1 wound for the start of the next scenario. Next, we would randomly select 4 heroes to start the campaign. They're going to begin in the city of Ashland. Then we'll consult the location chart, and under the city of Ashland, we find out that it's going to be a random board configuration. There's no special rules, and then we're going to roll a die, and depending upon the result, we would either play the Die Zombies Die scenario, hunt for survivors, or save the townsfolk. Now we're going to earn victory points according to the following table. If the heroes win the scenario, they're going to gain victory points equal to the number of turns listed on the scenario divided by 4. So in the event of, say, we played the scenario Die Zombies Die, it has 15 turns on it. So we divide that by 4 and round down, and that would get us a total of 3 victory points. If we lose the scenario, then we lose 3 victory points. We also lose 2 victory points for each hero that is killed or turned into a zombie hero. We lose 1 victory point for each hero that finished the scenario with an infection. We gain 2 victory points for traveling to the Ancor Chemical Works. That's a key location in this campaign. We can also be awarded victory points or lose victory points due to travel events. Once we complete a scenario in a location, we have to move to an adjoining location. So we would move to either Deadfall Landing or the town of Big Bay. Now we already know one of the events that'll happen there, so we can kind of base that information on what we would like to accomplish. So we'll say, for an example, in the city of Ashland, we did play the Die Zombies Die scenario and we won that. Well, that would give us 3 victory points. What we're trying to do is to push our human advantage to 7 or greater and then win the next scenario. And if we can do that, we would win the campaign. But there's going to be other things affecting this, loss of heroes, travel events, things like that. So that tracker is going to be moving back and forth, and we're trying to engineer the situation where we can gain those victory points and win the next scenario to win the campaign. Now I've thematically selected the scenarios for each type of location, and I've given a description of each of the locations. Deadfall Landing is a small timber and mining community, and when we perform a scenario there, in addition to the normal setup, we would make sure that we have the lumber mill tile included, and we're also going to start with a forest ring for the scenario. Now, several special rules will always be present in the scenarios unless it's forbidden by scenario-specific rules. We're always going to be using always zombie heroes, heroes replenish, grave weapons, survival decks, exploration markers, and zombie grave dead. Now in this campaign, the heroes can keep whatever items that they're able to accumulate and use them at the start of the next scenario. So that will also add another element into this. You can also keep any experience that they have accumulated as well. Now we'll be using my solitaire rules for Last Night on Earth that I've developed. And basically these attempt to kind of codify how the game is played solitaire, and it does attempt to deal with the massive bloat of the hero decks and zombie decks. Now, as you can see, as I have all of the expansions, our hero deck and zombie decks are quite large. So part of the solitaire rules attempts to get the deck bloat under control. And what I've come up with is several things. First thing we do is we remove all of the non-10th anniversary edition zombie cards that will automatically remove cards from the hero deck. We get those out. Then what we're doing is we're going to divide the zombie fight cards, remove those from the deck, and those are going to operate a little differently. Whenever a zombie is involved in a fight, we're going to roll a d10, and on a result of 9 or 10, they're going to draw a random card from the zombie fight deck and use that in the fight. Now, some scenarios have scenario search items. So what we would do prior to the setup is we would set those kind of cards aside. Now, I have a table here, depending upon what type of scenario search item is involved. And what we're attempting to do is to match the number of search items relative to a 65 card hand of a hero deck. I chose 65 because that is the number of cards that actually come in the 10th anniversary edition. So the designers are intending that this hero deck be 65 cards. So what we would do, we'd set any search item cards aside. Say if, for an example, if the search item were fire, we would set aside 4 fire cards. That would keep the proportion of the number of scenario search items in relation to the 65 card deck that the designers have intended. So if we were doing a scenario with fire as a scenario search item, we would set those 4 cards aside, pick those out, and then we would fill the number of cards randomly from the remaining hero deck to bring this deck total up to 65. We do the same with the zombie deck. We've set aside the zombie fight cards, so we would take the remaining deck of zombie cards and count out 65 cards for that, and that would form our decks for the scenario. If we don't do this, then potentially some very important scenario search items may or may not be in the hero deck. So we're kind of forcing to make sure that at least those cards are in the deck before we would start the scenario. Nothing would be worse than playing the scenario and finding out, well, the card that I needed wasn't even in the deck. So that forced that aspect of this pre-setup for the scenario. Other than that, the solitaire rules basically guide the solo player on how to operate the zombie player's forces and how they would spawn new zombies, especially if we have zombies with grave weapons or zombie grave dead involved in the scenario. And this basically just kind of directs the player on how they're going to purchase those special zombies from the available amount of zombie points that they would have to spawn during that turn. Other than that, the rules pretty much remain as the rules as written are. That's always my intent. And on the location chart, I've basically given several scenarios that would be kind of thematically correct for that location. And we have a chart that we'll roll on to determine what actual scenario we're going to play. So it does add an element of surprise for the player. He doesn't know what scenario he's going to have to undertake when he goes there, but he knows it would be within a certain range of 2 or 3 scenarios. And basically that is what I've come up with. I'm going to test this out and see how it plays and make any adjustments that would be necessary. I'm not sure when I'm going to bring this to the channel, if I'm going to save this for my 2025 Halloween month, or if I would bring this forward and give the viewers a demonstration of how it works. We'll have to see. Now, another campaign system that I'm working on is a campaign system for an old Avalon Hill sports game called Bout. This game came out in 1979, and this was designed by Jim Trunzo. And he's been very active in supporting this title throughout the years. And subsequent to Title Bout, he has released Title Bout 2. And I haven't looked into that very much. I'm pretty happy with my old Title Bout that I had from the 70s. And I'm used to it, and it's a fantastic simulation of professional boxing. But I wanted to take this to the next level, so I'm in the process of developing a campaign system for Title Bout. And I'll just give you a quick, brief overview of what I'm planning. This may or may not be something that would ever come to the channel. I'll have to see. I don't do a lot of sports coverage, as the viewers probably know. It's not because I don't want to, it's that I don't really have any modern sports games. Most of those I played back when I was younger, in the 70s and 80s, and I don't think the viewers would probably find that too interesting because, quite frankly, most of the players that are included back then are long since retired and many have passed away, so I don't know how many viewers would recognize those people involved. I've entitled this Revised Title Bout, and I'll just read you the header of what I've got so far. Revised Title Bout is my effort to expand the outstanding boxing board game Title Bout to include additional features that simulate the other elements of professional boxing, including a career system, training, economics, and fight negotiations. In this version, the player will take on the role as a fight promoter, managing a stable of fighters and attempting to propel them to the title of heavyweight champion of the world. The game begins with the promoter either creating a new fictional boxer using rules developed by Jim Trunzo, or randomly selecting a historic fighter from the 95 heavyweights included in the game. The fighter will begin the game in a 10-fighter division ranked from A through J, with A being the top-ranked fighters. The player, acting as a manager/promoter, must use their skill in directing the fighters in his stable to make money in the lucrative world of professional boxing. And basically, we would begin the game with a random fighter and $2,000 in cash. If we end up creating a fighter from scratch, we would start the game with $3,000 in cash. Now, I can't remember where I downloaded this from, but this was an article that was written by Jim Trunzo sometime back in the early 90s, from what I can gather. So I'm assuming that I uploaded this somewhere in the late 90s. And basically, in this article, he has developed ways to generate fighters and on how to rank them if you're going to do a tournament style playthrough similar to what I'm doing. So basically, as a fight promoter, we're going to have a calendar, and these will be calendars of 1 week's time each, so we would have 52 turns in a year. And you're going to attempt to, using your skill, to promote your fighter and get him fights that will raise him up in the rankings. Now, I've created a campaign map of sorts, and this will represent all of the boxing centers around the United States. Obviously, the big locations would be New York and Las Vegas, but we've also got some foreign cities like Mexico City and Montreal where there are, quite a bit of boxing history involved. So we'd begin the game by selecting a hometown for the fighter and the promoter, and he would start there, and then he would, throughout the sequence of play in the 52 weeks of that year, he has several actions available to him. He can do a travel action, and he can use that to move to another city and attempt to schedule a bout. He can prepare and resolve a scheduled bout in a city. He can conduct a bout negotiation action, and that's the main center of this, and that's how the fighter and his manager are going to try to secure these matches. You can also do a training action and improve the fighter's skills. All of these actions cost cash. Now at the center of this is bout negotiations. It says the job of acting as a fight promoter is an art all in itself. Your job is to arrange the best fights for your stable of fighters that will make you the most money and propel your fighters into higher divisions. So I've developed basically a bout negotiation table, and we would make a roll on that table applying any of these modifiers and attempt to secure the most lucrative fights for our fighters and attempt to move them up in the standings. Now I've also developed a training and conditioning table, and whenever we do training we would make a D20 roll and determine what effect that training had on us. Possibly we could acquire sponsors, which would generate some extra income for us. I've got tables to determine the attendance depending upon the size of the venue, and there would be modifiers involved based on the popularity of the fighters that are in the match. I've also developed a pretty detailed economic system, and basically the manager is going to have to use his available cash and attempt to cover his expenses, which are the cost of his fighters in his stable, training costs, travel, etc. I've got a list of some famous boxing venues from the past, and we might be scheduling some of the matches in these locations. Another thing I've developed is a boxing bout agreement, and once we go into negotiations and we make our dice rolls, before we do that we have to fill out one of these boxing bout agreements, and if that is approved, those conditions will be what will occur after the conclusion of the bout. If we have to make changes to that, we can make changes to it, but once it's agreed upon, that is what we're going to get. It would tell us the number of rounds, the purse, what weight limit, and any special conditions. And so that's kind of what I'm working on for Title Bout. Like I said, I don't know if this is ever going to come to the channel, but I just wanted to inform the viewers of another campaign system that I'm kind of working on. This might be kind of fun, I don't know. I might even try just one knockoff bout to show the viewers this and to see if it's something that they might be interested in. I'm also working on a solitaire system for Star Wars Rebellion, along with the Rise of the Empire expansion. I've just started this, so this is going to be sometime in the future, but I have begun trying to develop rules for this that can be played, have the game played solitaire. We'll see if that's something that comes to fruition or not. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about some upcoming content on the channel. I've decided to temporarily put my campaign playthroughs of Purple Haze and Folklore the Affliction on hold until later this year. I'm thinking about providing a learn to play video for the board game Village. I have the big box version of that, and I'm very interested in that. It is set in a medieval European village, and you're kind of the patriarch of a family, and you're trying to make your family the most influential in the village, and that seems like a very interesting premise to me. I'm also considering doing full playthroughs of Lords of Baseball using the Deadball Dynasty solitaire rules. It looks very interesting to me, and I was encouraged when I downloaded that material, and it allows a solo player to play the game more in the intent of what the designer had, where the victory points are actually being matched up against another opponent rather than just beating your own score. I'm also considering a playthrough of This War of Mine using the Days of Siege expansion. I have not played that yet, and it looks to be pretty interesting, so that might be something that's coming to the channel. I'm also considering bringing a game to the channel that I haven't brought yet, and I've had it for years, and that's Robinson Crusoe. I also picked up the mystery expansion for that, so that would be something that I would think would be interesting to bring to the channel, playthrough of Robinson Crusoe. I'm also planning on bringing a playthrough of Jeff Davis' Confederacy at War. The game is very intriguing to me, and I think what I would do is film this and then edit it down to make it into a single video. That's one thing that I'm kind of planning on doing in the future, is I don't want to have a series of videos unless there's no way to help it. I'd like to include the entire playthrough in a single video. So if that means doing a little creative editing, then so be it. But I think that might be an interesting title to bring to the channel. Now I'd like to discuss some games that I've got my eye on. I wanted to add a new zombie game to my collection, and I'm looking very closely at CMON's Night of the Living Dead. Also, White Dog Games' The Night. Both games based on the iconic George Romero movie from 1968. I'm in the process of doing a little research to see which game would be the most, I guess, solitaire friendly. At this point, it looks like White Dog Games' The Night would be the most solitaire friendly out of them, although CMON's Night of the Living Dead has some real beautiful components in that, so I'll have to see which of those I might be thinking on getting. I might end up getting both. We'll have to see. And then I'd have to decide if that's something that I might include in the 2025 Halloween month series that'll be coming up, and that's my next topic. I'm planning on setting aside October of 2025 for a Halloween month as I did last year. And I'm trying to come up with my lineup of games that I'm going to be featuring during that month. So far, I'm kind of anticipating that it will either be Eldritch Horror or Arkham Horror. I haven't decided on which of those two, but one of those will definitely be featured in the month. I'm also thinking about returning to Dead of Winter. I did a video on that quite some years ago, and I might be having that return. Another game that might be returning is Camp Grizzly. Very interesting game that I'm happy to have, and I've only brought that to the channel, I think, once. And then possibly I might be featuring another playthrough of Skeptics, and that's a ghost hunting game that I featured several years back. So that 2025 October Halloween month is still kind of in development, but that's kind of my thoughts on it at this point. I have to kind of prepare this far ahead to be able to make room in the schedule for that whole month. So that's why I'm doing the planning now in June. So for right now, that's, I think, the extent of the update that I'd like to provide for the viewers. These are things that I'm kind of working on, and I wanted to give the viewers a heads up as to what they can expect in the coming weeks and months. I look forward to seeing you at the channel in our next video, and in the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and wishing everyone a pleasant evening. Good night.